The battlefield was quiet, now. Smoke still rose from broken ships. Bodies, human and alien, lay frozen in the cold wind of the barren planet. But one man stood tall, his armor cracked, blood dried on his face. His name was David, a human soldier, who had fought harder than anyone expected. He wasn't a hero. He just survived. As the alien commanders walked through the ruins, their golden robes untouched by war, one of them stepped forward, Baron Corral, a powerful alien leader with violet skin and burning eyes. "You saved my life," Corral said, his voice deep and slow. "You risked everything, for someone not even your kind." David stayed silent. "He didn't do it for thanks." The Baron chuckled and motioned to his guards. "We reward our allies. Take this gift." From the shadows, two alien soldiers dragged something forward. It was a woman. No, an alien woman. Young and thin, with strange silver markings on her dark blue skin. Her clothes were torn, her ankles chained. Her arms were wrapped tight behind her back. She didn't look up. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. "She is yours now," Corral said with a smirk. "A rare kind, trained, quiet, obedient." David stared at the chained woman. Her body shook slightly, like she expected to be hit. "This is how you say thank you?" David asked. Corral laughed. "You are a soldier. You know how war works. Take her. Or leave her to the others." The soldiers behind Corral laughed. One even made a comment about breaking her in. David clenched his fists. He stepped forward slowly. The alien woman flinched. She didn't know what he'd do. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak but said nothing. Instead of grabbing her like an object, David kneeled. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. "I'm not going to hurt you," David said. She lifted her eyes just a little, just enough to see his face. There was confusion in her gaze. No man had ever asked her name. "Not in chains." David stood up, turned to the guards, and growled, "Take the chains off." They hesitated. "Now." With annoyed looks, the guards obeyed. The chains clattered to the ground. The woman didn't move. Her arms hung limp, her legs weak. David took off his cloak and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. "Let's get out of here." Corral narrowed his eyes. "Strange human, we give you a toy and you treat her like a person." David didn't answer. He guided the woman through the broken ships, past laughing soldiers who whispered behind his back. They reached his small shelter, just a metal hut with one bed, some water, and old rations. She stood at the door, unsure. David opened the door and stepped aside. "Go in, it's safe." She entered slowly, like an animal waiting for a trap. She sat on the floor in a corner, silent, stiff. David gave her water. She looked at it like it might be poisoned. Then she took a sip. Her hands trembled. "You can take the bed," he offered. She shook her head quickly. "Okay," he said, sitting across the room. "Sleep where you want." Hours passed. David didn't speak again. He laid on the cold floor and closed his eyes. In the darkness, he heard a soft whisper. "Zyra." He opened his eyes. She was watching him. "My name is Zyra." David smiled a little. "Nice to meet you, Zyra." She pulled the cloak tighter around herself. "Why, aren't you like the others?" David stared at the ceiling. "Because I hate chains." Zyra lowered her head. She didn't cry. But for the first time in years, she felt something warm in her chest, something strange, something close to hope. The sound of heavy breathing woke David in the middle of the night. He sat up, confused. His hand reached for his sidearm, but it wasn't an enemy. It was Zyra. She was curled tightly on the cold floor near the door, shaking. Her breathing was shallow, fast, like she was hiding from something no one else could see. David moved slowly. "Zyra!" She gasped and jumped, pressing her back against the wall, eyes wide with fear. For a moment, she didn't even recognize him. I won't touch you," David said gently. I was just checking if you're okay. Zira didn't speak. She stared at him like a frightened animal. The cloak he gave her was still wrapped around her shoulders. Her bare feet were pressed against the cold metal floor. She refused to use the bed, like she didn't believe she deserved it. I told you the bed is yours, David whispered. She looked away. Slaves don't sleep on beds. David's heart sank. You're not a slave anymore. But Zira didn't answer. In the morning, David cooked something simple: protein cubes and warm broth. He placed a bowl near her. She sniffed it. Then picked it up and ate with her hands, messy and fast, like she hadn't eaten in days. Take your time, he said. She paused, licked her fingers. Her eyes scanned the room like someone was watching. You don't have to rush, David added. Zira stared at him for a long moment. Why do you keep being kind? David shrugged. Why not? No man is kind without a reason. David sighed. I'm not like other men, Zira frowned. That's what they all say. Days passed. Zira remained quiet, always watching, always ready to run. She still slept on the floor. She still refused to touch the bed. But one day David came back to the hut and found something new. Zira was humming. She didn't even realize it. Her eyes were closed. She was sitting near the door with a small crystal David had given her, a glowing rock from Earth. It played soft music if you shook it gently. Zira was doing just that. The tune was a soft Earth lullaby, something from old human culture. And Zira was smiling. It was small, fragile, but it was real. When she saw David, her smile vanished instantly. He raised his hands. Don't stop, I like that. She looked down. I didn't mean to. It was beautiful. Zira held the crystal tightly. On my planet, music is forbidden for slaves. David sat beside her, but not too close. Do you want to talk about your planet? She shook her head. Not yet. That night, she had another nightmare. David woke again to the sound of her crying in her sleep. But this time, he didn't move. He watched as she tossed and turned, whispering in a language he didn't know. Then she screamed. Her eyes snapped open. She sat up, sweating, trembling. David stood and walked over. It's okay. Zira didn't run. She looked at him, broken and tired. They used to shock us if we made noise, even in sleep. David sat down beside her and placed a blanket over her shoulders. She looked at his hands. You could have taken me. You had every right. No, he said firmly. I had a choice. And I chose to let you be free. Zira touched the floor gently. Then why do I still feel chained? The next morning, David found Zira sitting on the bed. Not sleeping, just sitting. He smiled. That bed isn't cursed, you know. Zira looked down. I wanted to see how it felt. And, she paused. Soft. David laughed. That's usually what beds are. Zira looked up. Maybe I'll try sleeping on it one day. David gave her a nod. When you're ready. She tilted her head. You really don't want anything from me. I just want you to be okay. Zira blinked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That's new. And for the first time, she reached out and touched his hand. Just for a moment. Just enough to say, thank you. Zira had never seen rain before. Not like this. The shelter's roof leaked slightly. Drops tapped the floor like tiny fingers. Outside, the sky was dark and wild gray clouds roaring over the empty alien plains. Zira stood by the open door, one hand resting on the frame, the other reaching into the cold rain. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't pull away. David sat behind her, quietly fixing a broken light. You like the rain? She nodded slowly. It's not loud, not painful. He looked up. Was it painful where you're from? Zira didn't answer. She just stepped outside, letting the rain touch her face. For the first time since he'd met her, she closed her eyes and breathed. Her hair stuck to her cheeks, Water ran down her arms, and her lips parted. Then it happened. A small sound, a light laugh, a fragile smile. David froze. He didn't want to scare it away, like a bird that might fly if he moved too fast. Zira turned to him, the rain still falling around her. Your world has beauty in strange places. This isn't even Earth, he said. Just a forgotten outpost. A junk planet. She stepped back inside and sat beside him. Then maybe beauty follows you, David chuckled. Now who's being kind? Zira smiled again, this time with less fear. Later that day, David gave her something. A small box. Old, metal, scratched. What is it? Zira asked, touching the lid. Music box, David said. Very old, from my grandmother. Zira turned the key slowly. The box began to play a soft melody. The tune was slow, almost sad, but warm. Zira leaned closer, eyes wide. Her hand covered her mouth. It sounds like a dream. She looked at David. Why give this to me? Because it made me feel calm, he said. And I think you need calm more than I do. Zira hugged the box to her chest like a treasure. Over the next few days, things began to change. Zira started helping around the shelter, cleaning, sorting supplies, cooking what little food they had. She even adjusted the broken water unit on her own. You're pretty good at this, David said. I wasn't always a slave, Zira replied. I used to study, learn, build. David raised an eyebrow. Really? What did you study? She hesitated. Tactics, engineering, royal defense. He blinked. Royal? Like ... palace stuff. Zira nodded, slowly. My father was a noble. Until the coup. They took him, then me. David's expression changed. You were royalty? Was. She said, not anymore. He sat beside her. You're still something important. No, Zira whispered. Now I'm just a reward. That night, David took her to the nearby hilltop. They climbed slowly, under the purple alien sky. Stars blinked above, too many to count. Zira sat down in the grass. David sat beside her. For a while, they just watched the sky. I used to hate humans, Zira said softly. David chuckled, not surprised. We haven't exactly been kind, but you confused me. How so? You're strong, but not cruel. You have power, but don't use it to hurt. I kept waiting for you to change, to become like the others. David turned toward her. And now? Zira looked into his eyes. Now I'm just scared. You won't stay. In the morning, trouble came. A soldier arrived at the edge of the outpost, a tall alien woman in golden armor, with piercing yellow eyes. David walked out to meet her, keeping Zira behind him. The alien spoke calmly. Human, do you know who your little pet truly is? David didn't flinch. She's not a pet, the woman laughed. She's royal blood, daughter of a noble house. Do you think others won't come looking for her? Zira stepped forward. Face pale, the woman stared at her. Zira, they thought you were dead, but you're still breathing. How lucky. Go, David said. We're not your concern, the woman smirked. We'll see. You may have won her chains, but some want her head. And just like that, she vanished. David turned to Zira. Is it true? Zira looked away. I didn't want to be special. I just wanted to be free. David touched her shoulder. Then we'll fight for that freedom. Zira looked up. Her lips shook, but then she smiled again. Asterisk, the silence was wrong. David knew it the moment he stepped into the shelter. Too quiet. No hum from the water unit. No soft humming from Zira's music box. No trace of her. His heart pounded. Zira? He called out. No answer. The bed was still warm. The cloak lay on the floor. One of her shoes was missing. Then he saw it, a line dragged in the dirt, leading out the door. David grabbed his weapon and ran. Hours earlier, Zira had gone to gather herbs near the edge of the cliffside, something she had done many times. But this time, she didn't notice the shadows watching her from behind the trees. Two cloaked figures moved like ghosts. She turned too late. Sharp sting hit her neck. Zira gasped, staggered, and collapsed. The last thing she saw was golden armor and a cruel smile. When Zira woke up, she was back in chains. Thick ones, heavy ones, around her wrists and ankles. Cold metal bit into her skin. She was in a dark chamber lit by blue torches, surrounded by masked figures wearing robes of black. And Gold.1 stepped forward. She recognized him by voice. "Princess Zira," the figure said with mock respect. She spat on the floor. "I am not a princess anymore." "Wrong," he said. "You are still a symbol. A living banner. A threat to the new rule." Zira's head hung low. "Then why not kill me?" "Because a dead princess is a martyr. A broken one? That's more useful." He leaned closer. "And when your human sees you like this, he'll learn what happens to those who take what doesn't belong to them." David tracked them for miles through the hills, over the dried riverbed, past old ruins. He finally found the temple ruins and the guards outside. He took them down quietly one by one. He entered the chamber with fire in his eyes, and there she was, Zira, on her knees, arms pulled behind her, face bruised, lip bleeding. The masked figure smiled. "Ah, the pet has come." Looking for his owner, David raised his weapon. "Let her go." "No," the figure said. "She belongs to her people, not you." "I don't own her," David growled. "She chose me." The figure turned to Zira. "Tell him. Tell him you're not his. Tell him it was all a lie." Zira looked at David. Her voice trembled. "I am not his." David's heart dropped, but then she added, louder this time, "I am mine, and I choose who I stand beside." She stood, despite her chains, and walked to David. The guards raised their weapons. David fired first. The battle was quick. Violent Zira used her chains as weapons. She fought like a storm. David fought beside her like they were one. When it was over, the guards were down, the chamber silent. David rushed to her. "You okay?" She nodded, breathing hard. "I'm tired of running." He knelt, unlocked the chains, and tossed them aside. "No more chains," he whispered. Zira leaned into him, resting her forehead against his. "No more cages." As they walked away from the temple ruins, Zira stopped one last time. She turned and looked back, not at the enemies, not at the pain, but at the old version of herself, the chained girl who flinched at kindness. She left her chains lying in the dirt and said, "That girl is gone." David took her hand. Together they walked into the wild wind, toward freedom. But deep in the stars, something else was watching. Because Zira had returned, and her enemies were far from finished. The message came in blood. David and Zira found it hanging from the wing of their broken shuttle, a red cloth, marked with strange alien symbols. And a necklace Zira thought she'd never see again, her mother's necklace. Zira froze. Her knees nearly gave out. David caught her. "Zira, what is that?" She touched the symbol with shaking fingers. "They know I'm alive, and they want me to come back. Is it a trap?" Zira nodded. "Always." That night, under the stars, Zira sat in silence while David repaired the unit. Then the screen lit up. A face appeared, not a stranger. A woman with silver eyes, dressed in royal silk. Zira's older sister, now the ruler of their former empire. "Little sister," the woman said with cold calm, "come home. You will not be punished. You will not be chained." Zira narrowed her eyes. "Liar, you're still of the blood," her sister said. "But if you stay with the human, then you are no longer one of us." David stood behind Zira. "She's not yours to command." "She was never yours either," the sister snapped. You think because you treated her gently, she is yours now? I never wanted to own her, David said. Just walk beside her. The screen flickered. Zira, her sister said, her voice lower now. You must choose your name and people. Or your human protector. If you return, you will live. If you stay with him, you will be hunted like an animal. The screen went dark. The silence felt louder than before. The next morning, Zira packed her things without a word. David watched. So, this is it. Zira didn't look up. I have to go. Do you want to go? Zira paused. Her hands trembled. She dropped the pack and finally looked at him. I don't want to leave you. Then don't. They'll kill you, David, slowly, and make me watch. He stepped closer. Then we run, far, to the edge of the galaxy if we have to. Zira laughed bitterly. There's no edge far enough. David grabbed her hand. Zira, I didn't fall in love with a slave. I fell for a fighter. A woman who smiled through pain, who broke her own chains. I don't want you to choose safety. I want you to choose yourself. Tears filled her eyes. I choose ... She whispered, voice shaking, you. That night, they left the outpost behind. No more hiding. They flew low through alien canyons, changed routes every few hours, and stayed away from old communication networks. Zira said little. But she kept close to David, closer than ever before. And as they sat by a fire under alien moons, she asked, if I wasn't from royal blood, if I was just a normal girl, would you still care? David leaned in. You're not royal to me because of your name. You're royal because of your heart. She smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. I was never allowed to choose my path, she whispered. Now I finally have. And then something neither of them expected. A signal from orbit. A fleet was coming, not just soldiers, her sister. In person. With weapons, ships, and laws. And this time, she wasn't coming to ask. She was coming to take. Far above, the ships broke through the clouds. Zira stood tall, no longer trembling. They're here, David said. Hand on his weapon. Zira looked at him, then let them come. This time, she wouldn't be the girl in chains. This time, she would fight as a queen beside the man she chose. The sky was on fire. Warships broke through the clouds like blades cutting through cloth. Their engines roared across the alien plains, and searchlights swept the ground like hungry eyes. Zira stood at the edge of the cliff, her hair whipping in the wind, her hand clenched around the hilt of the knife David had given her. Behind her, David worked fast to fuel the old shuttle. It wasn't fast. It wasn't strong, but it was all they had. They found us faster than I thought, David said, voice tight with urgency. They were never far, Zira replied. I just hoped we had more time. A beam of red light hit the ground not far away, a warning shot. They're not here to talk, David muttered. Zira turned toward him. Then we don't talk, we fly. The shuttle's engine coughed to life, shaking as dust flew everywhere. David pulled open the side door. Zira climbed in, glancing once more at the horizon. The fleet was landing, giant ships shaped like thrones, painted with the royal sigil of her family. Her sister had come, and she had brought an army inside the shuttle. Zira sat in the co-pilot seat, silent. David looked at her. You okay? She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, no. He nodded, me neither. As the shuttle lifted off, Zira saw a group of riders speeding after them, light armor, long rifles, banners blowing behind them. Elite royal hunters. Her old guardians, her past. David pushed the shuttle harder. The engine screamed, we won't make it to open space, he said. Not like this. Zira looked ahead. Then we go low, through the canyon. They won't risk their ships there. David smirked. That's suicidal. Zira met his eyes. So's loving me. He turned the shuttle toward the sharp cliffs. They dropped low, flying through the narrow gap, stone walls racing by on both sides. Behind them, The riders followed. Wind and dust filled the air. The canyon twisted sharply, and David struggled. To hold the controls steady. Zyra leaned over. "Let me help." She adjusted the stabilizer, redirected power to the wings. Her old training kicked in. This wasn't just survival. It was fighting back. "They're gaining," David said. Zyra hit a switch. "Boost in 3, David braced himself. 2, the engines roared. 1, the shuttle surged. Forward rocks fell behind them. One rider clipped a wall and exploded into flames, but 3 more remained. Suddenly, a warning light blinked on the dashboard. Fuel cell ruptured. David shouted, "We can't keep this up." Zyra looked at the map. "There's an old smuggler's port 2 clicks ahead. If we land there, I can reroute the fuel manually." David didn't argue. They dove toward the broken port and abandoned outpost built into the rocks. The shuttle hit the landing pad hard. Dust rose. Sparks flew. David jumped out. Gun raised. Zyra grabbed a toolbox and ran toward the fuel panel. The hunters closed in. David opened fire. Zyra worked fast, hands shaking but focused. Almost. One hunter landed on the edge of the platform. He raised his rifle, aimed at her, then dropped. Shot clean through the chest. David stood over her, breathing hard. Zyra whispered, "I'm done." They ran back inside and lifted off just as the last hunter reached the edge. In the sky, they finally broke through the clouds. Space opened before them, cold and wide. They weren't safe yet, but they were free for now, inside the shuttle. Zyra leaned back, covered in sweat and bruises. David sat beside her, blood on his sleeve, gun in his lap. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Zyra whispered, "You could have left me." David looked at her. "Never." She reached for his hand. "You keep risking your life for me." He smiled weakly. "Because you're worth it." Zyra's eyes shimmered. "Then maybe it's time I stop running." David raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Zyra took a deep breath. "If I'm going to live free," she said softly, "then I want to live it with you. Fully." He blinked. "Are you saying I'm saying?" She smiled, exhausted but strong. "I choose you again. Not just as a protector, but as a partner." David smiled back, heart pounding. And somewhere, far behind them, a furious queen watched her sister slip out of her grasp again. But this time, Zyra wasn't running. She was heading straight into her future. The wedding dress wasn't made of silk or gold. It was made from an old parachute, stitched by hand. Rough, torn in places. But when Zyra stepped out wearing it, David forgot how to breathe. They stood at the edge of a quiet alien lake, hidden deep in the forest of a forgotten moon. The sky was silver, the water still. No guests, no music, no priest, just 2 people. A broken alien woman who had once been chained, and a human soldier who had chosen to love her, not own her. "Are you sure?" David asked. Zyra smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He stepped closer. "This isn't a real wedding, no temple, no papers." Zyra reached for his hands. "Then let's make our own kind of real." They stood facing each other. Zyra spoke first. "I was born into power, then I was thrown into chains. I thought I was nothing. I thought I would die that way. But then, you looked at me, not as a slave, not as a weapon, but as a person." She paused, voice shaking. "You didn't save me. You let me save myself." David swallowed hard. He spoke next. "I was trained to fight, not to love. I didn't think I had anything left to give. But then I met you. You were scared, silent, but still strong. You taught me how to care again. You made me want more than war." He took her hands. "I want you, always." Zyra's eyes shimmered. "Then take me, as your wife," David smiled. "Forever." Their lips met, and just like that, a new life began, not as soldier and slave, but as equals. As partners. As something more than what the galaxy ever allowed them to be. But peace didn't last. A message arrived just 3 days later. A bounty had been placed on Zira's head. By her sister. By the royal court. By those who wanted her back in chains. Or dead. David expected Zira to panic. She didn't. She simply stood, wrapped the parachute cloth tighter around her body, and said, "Then, let them come." The attack came at night. Ships surrounded the forest. Mercenaries, bounty hunters, royal soldiers, all sent to capture the runaway princess bride. David grabbed his weapon, but before he could fire a shot, Zira stepped forward, holding a tiny device. She activated it. A pulse spread across the land. Suddenly, all enemy weapons shut down. Ships powered off. Communications jammed. Zira turned to David. "I built this before they took me. My final invention. They didn't know I still had it." He stared in shock. "What does it do?" Zira smirked. "It makes the mighty powerless." She walked out to the invaders. They stared at her. She stood tall. No chains. "No fear. I am not your prisoner," she declared. "I am Zira of no house, wife of a human, and free by my own hand." The mercenaries hesitated. And then, one by one, they backed down. They had been paid to capture a runaway slave, not to face a queen who made machines that could end their weapons. The ships left, one by one. Later that night, David and Zira sat on the roof of their small home. The stars were quiet again. Zira rested her head on his shoulder. "I never wanted to be queen," David smiled. "You're not." She looked at him. "You're more," he said. "You're mine." She smiled softly. "And you're mine." Years later, people would tell stories. Stories about a chained alien woman who was gifted like property, but became a legend. They would say she tamed a human who was feared in battle. But the truth was simpler. They tamed each other. Not with war. Not with chains. But with love.